Africa without, and in that process, our leaders were also going there to negotiate, and, with petitions and everything else, So we did not just end up here. We are saying that those kind of things are the factors that were happening out there on their own, but they had a serious impact in terms of the struggles that we're waging. Also, again, if you talk about, there were periods of First and Second World Wars. Even there, our people had hope that after the World Wars, because they participated in those wars, they thought that at least something will happen positive for them. But particularly, comrades, the disappointment that our leaders had after the British decided not to listen to our leaders, and they just decided, no, they prioritized the white people more than the African people. So that's one thing. In terms of subjective factors, comrades, is that we cannot say, like, wish away the Christianity that was played, the role that the Christianity played in our struggle. We had people that accepted, because they studied in the missionary schools, others studied abroad. So they had to understand. We had people of clergy. That's why what happened is that they decided to form their own churches. Because why they decided to form their own churches? Because they did not agree and believe in the same values that the white Christians were propagating. So they said, we have to form our church. That's why today you'll have, the Ethiopian church as one of the churches that was established. Because it was established because why? We had to understand the values that have to, inform the African people. The other point that is subjective, comrades, is the emergence of African intellectuals. These intellectuals, they did not just study it. What is important about them, whatever they studied abroad, they came to apply in our continent, in our country, and they started to see things. They did not just study for themselves, but they studied because they wanted to, they saw a reason for them to change the society. So that's what is important there, that the role that the intellectuals, we can call them different ways, but the intellectuals played in our struggle, is very important. One of the turning points in our struggle, comrades, is the Bambata Rebellion. Sometimes we call it just Bambata Rebellion, but we don't go into deeper details. What was the rebellion about? It is about the poll tax and many laws that the white people were imposing on the African people. So Bambata was a turning point in our struggle. Another point, comrades, that also led to us having this, what you call the subject, the subjective factor that led to the formation of the ANC, is the fact that people who started to lose their land, and people who used to live on land. And then now what happens is that now they were forced to go to the American laborers. They have to go to the cities and work in the cities, leave their families behind, live the life that they were accustomed to live a new life. They had to go and live in the mines, in unhealthy conditions, in areas where people are not supposed to live. So that's what happened there. That also informed why the ANC was formed. But also, again, the last point that led to the formation of the ANC was the emergence of political organization. ANC, comrades, was not the only organ. There were organizations before the ANC. But the bringing of all those organizations together led to the ANC. There were organizations in Natal, there were organizations in the Cape, in the Transvaal. Many of those native congresses, they decided to get together. There was that call that let's get together so that we can stop fighting a common enemy as divided people. We fight the common enemy as a united force. So that was the reason that the ANC was formed. Now, if you look at the ANC, comrades, like any other organization, who constituted the ANC at that time? It was traditional leaders. It was clergy, lawyers, journalists, African men, but it was only African men that constituted the ANC. But if you look at this group of people, who are they? It's the people, comrades, that you can say were people that were enlightened. But the education that they received, it was not education that separated them from the society. They saw that there's a need for them to in a bit, okay? Back. Yeah. So the ANC, as it was formed, comrades, they were leaders of the society, the traditional leaders, the clergy, the lawyers, even the clerks that were there when the ANC was formed. We are educated people, so who led this organization. But what is glaring there is that this organization, when it was formed, it was only men and only one woman that was there, who did not really participate. Mamushalo Maklage was the only woman as an observer in that gathering. It's a very important point that we have to note. But also, these leaders, comrades, because they got education, they were exposed to a number of things that were happening in the world. They got inspired. They got inspired about the struggles that were taking place everywhere in the world. So that's how they decided to get together and form the ANC. But, comrades, as we move on, that the ANC, like any other organization, it had to undergo certain difficulties. It had to experience difficulties in itself. That's why today, comrades, we cannot say that the renewal of the ANC is a new thing. The renewal of the ANC, that's why we've learned in the past, there were stages where the ANC was going down, it had difficulties, particularly, comrades, around the 30s. The ANC was a bit nullified, it was not there. But there had to be a processes of renewing the ANC and bringing it to life, because it was a very important weapon that was there for, to pursue the struggle against colonialism and a struggle against oppression. Also, again, comrades, what led to us is that, that is very important, comrades, that in 1948, when National Party gained power, it made it clear that there's a separated big division, there's us and there's white people. And therefore, what is important that that kind of formation of the National Party, it made us to resolve more, to ensure that we have to fight this thing. But one of the things that we did, comrades, that we have to really acknowledge is that the passive resistance, as led by the Indian Congress, also showed us how to engage the enemy. So we've learned from that, and there were so many activities, comrades, by women, fighting against passes. There were so various forms and sectors of the society were engaged. But the ANC, throughout that process, comrades, was undergoing difficulties, but also, making some achievements in the process. So that's what is important. In the 50s, I think in the 50s, comrades, is a very important time in the ANC, because that's when the ANC started now to gain a new life. That's when we started to see the ANC having clear programs of engaging. Yes, we understand they were also in that process, comrades, implementing the program of 1949, which was initially came as a proposal from the Youth League, but that program was adopted by the ANC conference, and that program was clear in terms of what needs to be done, because there was a belief that some of the negotiations that were engaging with the powers that be might not yield results, and therefore there must be a way of engaging the enemy, so to say, so that it can listen and hear us. That's why we engaged in the 50s in the defiance campaigns and many other programs that were, if you look, for instance, there were bus boycotts, there were rent boycotts, and people were refusing to be removed from where they were staying, to be sent to the outskirts of the towns. So there was also, the apartheid government was also introducing Bantu education, and the ANC took a decision to say we are going to oppose Bantu education, to such an extent that the ANC said parents must not take their kids to schools because the Bantu education. We also saw, comrades, that even this Bantu education was extended into the University of Fort Hare, where the lecturers and the senior people at Fort Hare decided to resign because they were protesting against Bantu education. Now, one of other important milestones in our history, comrades, is the Freedom Charter. One thing about the Freedom Charter, comrades, it's not the clauses of the Freedom Charter. It's not but what is important is that the Freedom Charter was a product. Yeah. So the Freedom Charter, comrades, what is important is now, it showed the might of the people what the people want. So the Congress movement started to engage people, because Freedom Charter is not just an intellectual document. It is a document that is a product of the engagements from the people. So we'll talk about it to women. 50s and the 60s, comrades, that's why the apartheid government started to push hard in repressing and oppressing our people. We will remember, comrades, at that time, that was in 1950, when the Suppression of Communism Act, and it is the same act, comrades, that was used even to ban the ANC. It was the same act that was used in 1976 to ban organizations. So it was just updated. Leaders were arrested at that period, So it is also that period, comrades, that the leadership of the ANC took the decision to say, Comrade Oliver Tambo must go, because they anticipated that the enemy is going to be hard on us, and therefore we need to have an external mission. So Oliver Tambo was sent to go out and start this mission. Again, we remember, comrades, the breakaway from the PAC, because they disagreed with us around the Freedom Charter. So there are so many other things, comrades, that took place. ANC is banned, leaders sent to, I think, most of us. But one of the key highlights, comrades, of the 60s was the Morogoro Conference. Remember, comrades, even then, the ANC had difficulties in exile. There were so many things, because one of the problems that we had, comrades, is that you had people trained, but the problem that in any battle, you need a rep base. But the ANC did not have a rep base. That's why some of us, comrades, will say the ANC had to fight in different countries, because it was difficult for the ANC to have to engage in a battle without a rep base. So that Morogoro Conference, comrades, is a turning point. That's why most of us, comrades, when we talk about Morogoro Conference, we say it was a watershed conference. Why? It's not because that anything happened. It was because the decisions that were taken in that conference were decisions that changed how the ANC worked and how the ANC, even to the extent of establishing what we call Revolutionary War Council, which started to drive everything. That's why in 1982, comrades, that the commission that was established by President Tambo came up with the 4 pillars of the movement. The mobilization of people, because they believe that, and so from the lessons from Vietnamese, was that if you want to mount a significant campaign and fight up against the colonizers, we have to be based within the society. Rebuilding of the ANC, comrades, remember that period of the ANC was banned. It means that you have to start afresh. But what is also important, comrades, that we needed international solidarity for the movement. 70s, comrades, after some time when the ANC was I don't want to go to the language, they said there was a lull. The ANC was there, but rebuilding itself. But the ANC we started to see things happening. We started to see the worker struggles. We started to see the students. We started, the students in 1976. We saw the formation of COSAS in 1979, which started now again to say, let's go back to the Freedom Charter. Yeah. The COSAS started to adopt and said, let's adopt the Freedom Charter as a guiding document for all our struggles. And that opened the way for everything else, for every other organization that was progressive to adopt the Freedom Charter. Also, what we have learned, comrades, in the process, that our struggle was also informed by what was happening in the neighborhood, what was happening in Mozambique, what was happening in Angola, what was happening in other countries, Zambia, where these countries were getting their liberation. It inspired us. It inspired us so that we can be able to say we are learning from them. Some of them, comrades, gave us places so that we can be able to have bases there. So that's what was important, comrades. We also got support from comrades, from our friends in the East, USR, who assisted us. But also, we're fighting against another regime, because our regime, comrades, was getting support from the West. We also got support in terms of the non-aligned countries like Sweden and other countries. 80s is a very important part in terms of our history, because it is that time, comrades, it's a turning point in our struggle. Some people, when they talk about the 80s, it is a time when the door was kicked. So because now the fight was at the doorstep of the enemy, and the enemy had to withdraw the soldiers from the borders and fight the enemy inside. That opened up space for us to send people inside to start reactivating the ANC. So the 80s was a very important time in our struggle. Launching of the UTF is one of the critical elements, comrades, because UTF, what it did, it brought together everybody who believed in the Freedom Charter, who believed in the liberation of our people. The formation of COSATU, taking tune from the SACTU that was formed, that was part of the Congress Alliance. So all those kind of things, comrades, informed our struggle. And then the resistance was high when we started to see now the fires were burning in every corner, but not without a price. Many people died in that process. Many souls were lost, many lives were lost, and so many things had happened. But that was because the enemy also, whilst we're upping our game, the enemy was also upping its game and intensifying its brutality against people. So that's what happened. But through that process, comrades, that led to the talks. People were starting to define, and there were negotiations were taking place. The reason that there were negotiations, comrades, it was not because of the good heart of the National Party government. It was because the country was starting, and the isolation of South Africa, in terms of economical and otherwise, also impacted on what was happening in the country. So we all know, comrades, I'm not going to, but we had democracy. What happened in that period of democracy, comrades, negotiations? We had Chris Hani being killed at that time. I think that also opened up, doors for us to go for elections. So basically, comrades, before I start up, is that we have been in government for the past few decades, 3 decades or whatever. But what is it that happened to us? We started, comrades, that when we talk about the government of national unity, it's not something new. We won the elections in 1994. But our leaders, because they were far-sighted, they understand the importance of bringing everybody. We brought everybody together. We ended up with the government of national unity. We appointed tried and tested leaders to be part of our government. That was one of the things that is important. But in our conference, comrades, we also looked at how we look at the problems. That's when we also identified some of the problems of the ANC, comrades. If you go back to the reports and documents of the 1997 conference, comrades, and other conferences, that's when we started to see weaknesses of the ANC, the divisions in the ANC, the greed that started to creep into the ANC, the corruption started to settle in the ANC. Those are the things, comrades, within these 30 years that have started to characterize. And, but also what is a challenge now in this period, comrades, that we've got factional divisions, with factionalism that has divided us. To such an extent that, comrades, in that process of being divided on factional lines, we even lost contact with the society. So that's one of the things that has happened, comrades. Yeah, so, okay, I'll end there. Comrades, what we'll do is just running through these things, and we assume that everybody will go to his branch and discuss these things. We won't allow any discussions, just an appetizer.
Thank you, comrades. Thank you, Comrade Bandile. And sorry to make you rush through something that is so important. Comrades, we just wanted to give you a bit of a flavor of what is covered. I'm going to summarize what is covered in the other 4 modules in 10 minutes, because our leadership has been here for a long time, and we're running out of time, and we'd rather not try and cover everything, but give you a sense of what is there. So what Comrade Bandile was doing was covering, in summary, the presentation that would be made. It will be taped. It will be on this script, basically, and it will be presented before we start having discussion with every branch. So for about half an hour, in every module, there's a script. That's predetermined. Nobody can change the script because we all need to be trained in the same things. And then you will stop after 10 minutes and discuss a question, or open for questions, or open for discussion or comments. You'll carry on. So for every one of these 5 sessions, we'll need about 1 to 2 hours with the branch. So you could maybe even do 3 sessions if you have energy in a Saturday or so. So the second module takes us from what is our history to what does the ANC stand for? What are our values? What is our vision of the country we want to build? When we talk about non-racism, a united South Africa, a democratic South Africa. What did we have in mind? And where are we now in achieving some of those? When non-sexism got added, when a prosperous South Africa got added, when more focus in our strategy and tactics and so on was added on building a more equal and just society. Now, we tried to make sure that every ANC member leaves that session with an understanding of what we are fighting for and why our struggle is not over. How far do we still have to go? What have we done in terms of women, but what must still be achieved before we will have a non-sexist society? We also go through the oath of the ANC member and a little bit about the duties and the responsibility of the member. But the work of the branch comes later. So the third module deals with the South Africa we live in now. So what have we achieved? We start off by asking people, what are the big challenges that hold back development in our country? Why are we not there yet after 30 years? And for every challenge, then we say what we've tried to do or what we have achieved, what is still missing, and why is it still missing, so that people can understand why is there a problem with supplying potable water in all our municipalities right now. What is the underlying problem? What needs to be fixed? What went wrong with electricity? Why do we not have more jobs in the country? Why is crime still such a problem? And what are the new forms of crime? What impact did corruption have on our ability to deliver services? Okay, so we look at all the challenges that hold back development, and then we take the budget for this year in government, and we say this is what we are spending our money on. These are our priorities, but we also explain that we are living in a time of great economic, or very little economic growth, and we look at some of the issues that hold back economic growth. Lack of skills, lack of energy, lack of infrastructure in terms of road and transport, all those kind of things. We then look at something called inclusive economic development, and just say, if we really want to take our people to a much better place, and government doesn't have enough money to do it right now, how are we going to get there? So we unpack the budget and understand what are we spending, how much debt are we creating with our programs right now, how many of our programs are there just to support people who are living in poverty, not necessarily creating new jobs yet or growing the economy. How much of our money goes on education and how much of our money goes on debt payment? We look at the income from the 4 different main tax areas, and the fact that, for example, at the moment, our income from company tax is 16% of the budget. It used to be in the 30%. That's the consequence of an economy that is very weak at the moment. Okay, and then we go into this inclusive economic development, and we say, to include more people to be beneficiaries of any economic growth, to get more economic growth, to move the economy also to the townships and the informal sector, what do we need to do as government? And we unpack that. Okay, so that's Module 3. Module 4, then, of course, that's just the input. What we do in between is exercises. What are the main delivery problems in your area? What is your local government doing about it? What can our councillors do within the caucus to fight for this? Is there something we can do in the IDP, in the ward committees, in people's forums, to take these issues up as a community? For example, crime can never be just a government issue. It also has to be a people's issue. So we start this thing of turning the branch to its own reality, but with a bigger global understanding of what is going on. We have a very short session at the end. It's about 10 minutes of talking about the world, where we stand in the world, what the big threats are to the world, issues like climate change, the threat of war in many different regions in the world, the conflict in Africa, new things like droughts and floods and refugees and their impact on our country. From there we go into Module 4, which deals with the Constitution, the history of the Constitution, what we fought for, what we got in there. Which aspects of non-racism, non-sexism, united and more equal and all those did we actually start achieving in the Constitution? And then we have a lot of questions there about where are we falling short still. Then we also look at the Bill of Rights and who the Bill of Rights applies to. And we do some exercises there looking at people who are left behind in society still, people who are still marginalized, and also looking at issues like the rights of people who are undocumented migrants in our country, in the Bill of Rights. And then from there we look at the Constitution as it sets the framework for government and how the ANC understands government, the three spheres of government, as well as the separation of power, as well as the difference between the party and the state, the role of the opposition, all kinds of things like that. We could touch a little bit in the government and constitution session on the fact that we entered the first government after apartheid as the government of national unity and some of the aspects that that also included. The last session looks at the work of the ANC in the community. And that whole session tries to turn the ANC from an inward-looking, self-obsessed, leadership-obsessed organization, position-obsessed, to one that understands what is happening to the people in that community, is given some tools to do a basic board profile, to understand issues, to understand who are the main employers, what are the main service delivery issues, what are the main plans in local government, and what role the ANC should play to consult people about it, to inform people, to make sure that community problems are faced in community meetings, that our ANC ward councillors and others are involved together with our ANC local leadership in trying to solve and partner with other organizations, and not to be the only leader of society, as we have started thinking of ourselves, but as an organization that is there to mobilize people to become their own liberators and to take ownership of their own government. And that's more or less it. Thank you, Comrade Phoebe.
Amandla. No, thank you very much, comrades. I think you have received quite a sense of what's going to happen. But the emphasis we want to make is that as we take this course, as we roll it out to the structures, especially from January next year, the veterans of our organization will be playing a major role in ensuring that they impart this knowledge, they train many of our members. So they have a they are central to this program. We know very well that many of you know history, you're exposed to it, but it is important that we become very much unassuming. I'll cite an example. If you engage Comrade Andile Lungisa quite strongly, he's got a different view on when was the ANC formed and so on. And so history is very much important. And it's not just an anecdotal assertion. It's an assertion that is backed by his understanding of how history unfolded and so on. In some quarters, some of the academics have even said the ANC was formed 25 years earlier than it was formed. So it's important that we internalize, we read, we train, we become knowledgeable about our history. So we're going to make sure that we finish quite early now. So this that the comrades have done today, it's a good starting point. There's going to be a rollout that involves, as we indicated, about 300 trainers. So facilitators and so. So our facilitators will be all over the country, and we hope that with this little bit of taste of what will be rolling out, we will be able to take our branches on the journey of renewal. Just my last words before I call Comrade Phoebe. You know, there's one economist who was on an African safari. And I'd like to share the story. On that safari, he came across a tradition in one country or in one tribe where if you are to become a leader, you are being trained. And the assignment, there's only one assignment they give the successor or the prince, is to send that prince or the heir to the throne into a jungle. And his task is to learn all the sounds of the jungle. And every time he comes back, he must tell them, the elders, what is it that he heard in the jungle. And as normal, on the earlier days, they always report about the obvious sounds of the jungle. And once he mentions all the obvious sounds of the jungle, the roaring lion, the tweeting birds, they take him back into the jungle until he learns to hear the unobvious sounds to the ear. Because they say that develops the skill to listen. And that also develops the ability or the capacity of the successor to learn to sense danger in the silence of the jungle. So there are obvious things that we know, but we are going to go deeper to learn the unobvious things about our organization. And I think if we take this course seriously, we will be able to develop that capacity. On that note, Comrade Phoebe, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, comrades. I now call to the stage to take their seats Comrade Kgalema Motlanthe, who is the chair of the board of the O.R. Tambo School of Leadership, and Comrade Secretary General, who is overall responsible for the, I think the organization, the state of organization, to just take their seats on the podium. Comrades, while we wait for them to come to the fore, the Comrade Makura has asked us to just make an announcement that if comrades have suggestions about the 5 courses, about the specific issues that each of the modules should cover, they are most welcome to make suggestions, especially suggestions in writing, on the 5 areas that we cover, because we will continue to improve as we roll out the program. One of the things that we also always say to our comrades that roll out the programs is that there is a basic document and script that you have to follow, but it's also your responsibility to read up. If you are responsible for delivering the module on the Constitution, you have to read up on the Constitution and what has happened over that. So our course is also about encouraging ourselves to read beyond the obvious and read beyond the things that we get. And particularly for those comrades and as leadership present here, our leadership that are online, you are going to all be required to go to branches and teach these courses. So the outline is just the basics. Because you may be teaching comrades that are historians and will ask questions, and if you don't read beyond the basics, you're going to have a situation where the pupil teach the teacher. So thank you very much, comrades. And once again, I think that we really appreciate the efforts that's gone by Comrade Paulo Jordan, Comrade Mac Maharaj, Comrade Sue Rapkin, and others from the Veterans League that will be able to, for the work that they've done in development of the course. Comrades, as Comrade Makura said, the next step after this launch is further improvement based on the input of our over 700 comrades that have been part of this launch, both online and physical. We expect your inputs in writing, or you can talk to us about what you think can be improved, what can be added, etc. Next week, the 9th and 10th, if I'm right, Comrade Makura, we will be training 300 comrades from the leagues, from ANC provinces, from the Commissariat, from the Veterans League, from the Youth League, from the Women's League. That's going to be our first core of trainers that will go to the provinces. And then the next step is to train 3 per branch. Because remember, we want to train more than 600,000 people. So the 3 per branch is the third step to be able to make sure that we reach all of our members and we can run and roll out this program in every single one of the 23,400 wards or VDs that there are in the country. So that is the approach that we follow. And Comrade Makura told me to just say that we're not going to start rolling out next year. We're actually starting, the rollout has started. The rollout has started. It is here. We have the 5 courses. We're training the facilitators. The provinces are also beginning to identify the different comrades that they want trained. So we're ready to roll, and the rolling out has indeed started. One of the final points before I hand over to Comrade Kgalema, that's going to speak to us on behalf of the OR Tambo School, and then the closing remark by the Secretary General, is to say that amongst the lessons from our political education and popular education from the past is also that we must do training and political education in our languages. So when we did training, I was in the Western Cape in the 1980s. When we did political education, we did it in 3 languages, Comrade President. We did it in Afrikaans, we did it in isiXhosa, and we did it in English. And we want to do this foundation course in all of our languages, because that is also making sure that it reaches our members, and our members understand and can now reach our program. So thank you very much, comrades. I'm now going to hand over to Comrade Kgalema. Comrade Kgalema has been involved in political education for donkey years, going back to the National Union of Mine Workers, in prison, in the mass democratic movement, in the ANC, has always played a very important role in political education, and now as the chair of the board of the OR Tambo Leadership School, which we launched in 2018, or was it 2019? 2019. Over to you, Comrade Kgalema.
Thank you very much, Comrade Phoebe, and let me also pay my respects to the President and Deputy President, the SG and the Deputy SG and the TG, and our elder, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, former President of the ANC, and all the veterans here present, amaqala anomkanje obovu. Isinto asitolikwa ke, comrades, unfortunately, but you know what I mean. Yes. So comrades, I think my remarks are based on 2 sources. The one is Moses Kotane, the other is Jawaharlal Nehru. I'm doing this because one of the points made by Comrade Phoebe is that I've been involved in political education for donkey years. And of course, the results are there. In Gwede, Mantashe, you can see quite clearly these methods are not effective. And so in that context, Moses Kotane dealt with defects in party education. He wrote a document entitled Defects in Party Education. And in that paper, he says, education can and has been used to befuddle the minds of common people. And he goes on to say, proper education is a mirror in which man sees the world around him and learns to understand it. The right kind of education enables man to see what the world has been, what it is, and how it can be changed to suit him or his way of living. Education can be and has been used, as I said, to befuddle the minds of common people. But education can also be used as an important instrument in the struggle for freedom and human progress. And it is this kind of education that we need, the one that is an important instrument in the struggle for freedom and progress. That's what Moses Kotane says. He goes on to say, because one of the modules deals with the history of the ANC, he says we must study history to know and understand the story of man's development throughout the ages, the various forms of his social organization, and the causes of the rise and fall of those forms of human relationships. That's why we must study history. We should know that at some time in the course of their history, peoples of other countries also suffered political, economic, and social injustices, just as we do in South Africa. We should also know what they did in order to free themselves, their setbacks, and the secret of their eventful successes. Close quote. I think that gives us a frame of why we embark on political education. Because political education empowers, as Comrade President indicated, and is meant to raise our confidence in ourselves that, in fact, we are involved in a just cause and that we are going to employ methods that are going to ensure that we succeed in this cause. So when I go through the history of the ANC, I come across two periods whereby the ANC was moribund. The ANC structures were almost non-existent. And so in the 1930s, when Canon James Arthur Galata became the Secretary General of the ANC was almost dead. In fact, history records that they even went through a whole year without the National Executive Committee meeting even once. Whole year. And so Arthur James Galata gets elected as the Secretary General, and one of the first things he did on the Jubilee anniversary of the ANC, as the ANC was celebrating 25 years of its existence. So if you do arithmetic, it tells you that it is in 1937. He organizes and convenes a conference just to focus on organizing the ANC. how to reorganize the ANC. And it is at that conference where he introduces J.B. Marx and Moses Kotane as communists who are loyal members of the African National Congress. And at the end of that conference, an organizing committee was established, chaired by J.B. Marx. And the reorganization of the ANC commenced forthwith. At that time, the President General was Mahaban. And by 1942, he is replaced by Dr. Kuma. And James Talata continues as a SG. And they start reorganizing the ANC. Because up to that point, the ANC was not a mass organization. Because if you were a traditional leader and you were a member of the ANC, it was assumed that you've joined for all of your subjects. Yes. True. So they had to change the ANC constitution, amend it, to make it a mass organization. So they say, now you join for yourself as an individual. You don't join for your wife. You don't join for your husband. You don't join for your children. You don't join for your tribe. And that's when the ANC became a mass organization, by now accepting individual members. And they amended the constitution also to make provision for the establishment of the Youth League and the Women's League. And of course, we know the Youth League was established in 1944, and it played a very important role, and it impacted on the fortunes of the ANC, because by 1949, they caused conference to adopt their program of action. And key youth leaguers were elected into the National Executive Committee of the ANC. Walter Sisulu became the Secretary General. Oliver Tambo became a member of the National Executive Committee. By then, Nelson Mandela, 2 years down the line, replaced Elias Moraes as the president of the Transvaal of the ANC. So these were youth leaguers now going into the leadership of the ANC. I'm sharing these, comrades, with you because the history of the ANC is very important. But Moses Kotane explains to us why we need to study history. It is important to understand that rationale and the purpose of studying history. My second source is Jawaharlal Nehru. And Jawaharlal Nehru says, the past brings us many gifts. Indeed, all that we have today of culture, civilization, science, knowledge, aspects of the truth, is a gift of the distant or recent past to us. Therefore, it is right that we acknowledge our obligation to the past. However, the past does not exhaust our duty and obligation to the future. Our duty and obligation is to the future, not the past. And we learn lessons from the past by prying behind historical events, not by slavishly repeating what happened in the past under new conditions. So he says, if the past has given us some part of the truth, the future also hides many aspects of the truth, and invites us to search for them. But often the past is jealous of the future and holds us in a terrible grip. And we have to struggle with it to get free, to force and advance towards the future. So our duty and obligation is to the future. And the past, which gives us these rich gifts, is done and forgotten. And ours is to draw lessons from the past in order to understand the present in a manner which lays down a solid foundation for the future. The late Brawili, many of you would know Brawili, Professor Keurapetsi Khositsile, in one of his poems called "The Present is a Dangerous Place to Live," writes past, present, future as one word, because he was a poet. Past, present, future, one long word, is always now. So in our reading, in our analysis, we must always remember that past, present, future is always now. That's what Professor Khositsile taught us. Because if we rely on the rear view mirror to address the present, we will not be able to equal the challenges of the present. If we ignore the past, we will lose the lessons that the past gives us. But our obligation and duty is always to the future. So we must always be forward-looking. And if you are forward-looking, you are always optimistic. Because it's very easy, comrades, to talk ourselves into a depression. And then you need all kinds of stimulants. But if we are clear that, yes, we are here, that's where we are now, we are here, with all its complexities and so on. But our obligation is to the future. And we always remember that every journey begins at the end. If you don't know where you're heading to, of course, the taxi will take you wherever. And the taxi driver will say, "Hey, sekusela wena wethu manje." And you have to alight. But you don't know where you are. And if you plead with him, he says, "No, manje, sekusela wena wethu manje." Pumupel. Yeah. So it is important, comrades, for us to ensure that in our teaching of history, we understand why we do so. Yes, why we are teaching history. It's not because we want to bask in the glory of the past. It's not because we want to live in the past. Because our rolling out of this program. Now, one of the points that I thought I should make, comrades, is that when we were in the NUM, at some point, it became clear. So Anglo-American alone dismissed 40,000 members of the NUM, all at once, including the President of the Union. And then recognition and legal issues, because there was no Progressive Labor Relations Act. There were issues of health and safety, because the mining industry is a dangerous industry. And so it was important for the union to try and match the mining houses toe for toe, And in order to do so, at one conference, the proposal was that the membership fee, the subscription fee, must now be 1%. It was a radical proposition. And conference adopted it. But in order to implement, because you see, you can't deduct or cause deductions to be infected on anybody's wages without their express mandate. So in order to give effect to that mandate, the union had to re-sign all its members anew, all of them. Re-sign them anew, so that to be sure that they accept 1% as their membership fee. And of course, that was a massive exercise. But it bears lessons, I think, to the ANC now. I'll tell you why. Because I don't think, as Comrade Phoebe says, we have 600,000 members. I don't think we know who these members are. I really don't know if we are sure. And so this process must go hand in hand with the process of re-signing all these members anew. It's been done, it can be done. So that when we say we have 600,000 members, we know that indeed we have 600,000 members. Because you see, Golf explained to us the distinction between members and supporters. We've just listened to a clip of O.R. Tambo there explaining the distinction between criminals, agents, and vigilantes, and those that we think are ANC members. Because you see, a member must have obligations. A member must have duties and tasks. If you remember whose only task is to have a membership card, then you are a supporter. You're a supporter. Because the organization relies on members. When the provincial secretary says, we are going to that branch, he or she must be clear as to who he is referring to. Yeah. Because in this day and age, comrades, we need that clarity. Because our very being is dependent on that clarity. So we must be very clear. I'm suggesting that we try and do that. It's a hard ask, but at the end, I mean, when we did this exercise in the NUM, at the end we ended up with 400,000 members. But we were clear and sure that these are members. You make a call on them, they will answer that call because they are members. So I thought I should share with you these remarks, dear comrades, and that as both Comrade David and Phoebe and Besani have indicated, these modules can be tightened up and improved with, of course, feedback as they are implemented, because we can't have a complete, total package. But some things we do and learn as we do and finesse as we do, because thoughts must lead to action. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Amandla. That was quite profound. And then I think it has once more set the tone as to where we are going. Now we understand how far the political education has gone. Now I will call upon the SG to come and close. I can see he's yeah.
Amandla, Pata Ramaphosa Pata ANC Pata, Amandla. Thank you very much, program directors. When we conceptualized this program at Luthuli House, we are there with Comrade Phoebe, Makura, Nomvula, TG, Besani, Nduli, who is shuttling between Parliament and Luthuli House, but we are going to remove him very soon from one of the two. So we conceptualize this and Dumanana, of course. We are libalekum Dumanana. And Mahlengi Bengu. The NEC agreed that all of us and the conference, some of us, we must be full-time. Others came after. But me and Nomvula conference employed us to be full-time at Luthuli House. Now, and the TG, of course. So we are implementing the conference resolution that ANC members must be given political education. And we had Comrade Makura to lead that. And of course, OR Tambo School, we are led by Umkhulu as the chair of the OR Tambo School. So Comrade Makura, like the president said, took up the task and is doing a marvelous job. You know, when you do something, not because you're just complying, organization is deployed, but with passion. And I want to say it in front of him. Uguti, Comrade Makura is focused on the task. It's not half-hearted. He has done a good job with the team, of course, inducting MPs and MPLs throughout the country, Comrade President. Working very hard with the team. I also want to thank Comrade Piti. We are Lupala Comrade Piti. Our Piti. Our one and only Piti. And the team of ITU. We have agreed that Comrade should not proceed to present entirely the modules where Bandile started, because we started to have many arguments here, which is part of political education, about the history Bandile was presenting. And I went outside, I met Andile Lungisa. And then wandinikeza umphago ukuthi le content ipresent wapha ayiqhithanga ku NEC. So funeka izoqhitha ku NEC sifake izinto because it's lacking that content. So that ayilekhi la content uzayifumana iphelele with time. And ihleli pha icala ko Comrade iqala Comrade Thabo Mbeki. Uthi uBiti uyapresent apha happy le vision ye ANC angayibekiyo apha. Uthi qaba nje ngaphezulu. Ndaqonda ukuthi andazi zamphendula ndithini. Ngoba we told Biti and Makura to cut the program short because we have launched a program and unveiled it today, implementing the political education program. So, comrades, I want us to give these comrades a good round of applause. The president have been delivering speeches throughout the week. He came from Kazan in Russia, our president. We must always say that, President, we do appreciate the work that you do for the organization. It's a very difficult job. It's not easy. And you lead from the front. And I think yesterday your speech was very good and educational for all of us. And here is what we must understand, what we have been taught about political education. Lenin says, you don't assimilate knowledge and political education to become braggarts. You internalize it. Political education is deeds, is izenzo. It's not been quite an expert in terms of dropping concepts. It's about how you walk, how you speak, how you do your work. They say that when you've got political education, it gives you confidence to lead, to assert yourself, but not just to be a master of concept. Madaji speaks dialectics Gazvenda without saying, I'm speaking dialectics, and basically make it basic. So Tina, we like to say dialectics, and the next person doesn't know dialectics. Caleb Mutsabi, when we arrived in Grootfontein Maximum Prison in 1986 in state of emergency, we were excited about dialectics, I must say. Class consciousness, dialectics. And then we talk about Marx. And then one time he said, Marx woli muiteti gaiban. Ka gonne munno o shwele gale. And then Arbanna liti historia le khotla. And then he banned this thing of Marx and everything. Every day he will give a lecture, political education, on national democratic struggle. Commandant Caleb Mutsabi. When we started, comrades were being taught, but not the basics. So that's where we start. ABC. It can be assumed that you know everything, but these basics teach you how to become a good person, a good comrade, how to become disciplined in the organization. If political education doesn't teach you to be disciplined, then you are not there. You go to meetings, you disrupt them. Political education must be able to assist you independently to know that the organization is selling out or not selling out. You don't have to struggle to understand what is GNU and what does it mean, GNU, and not say that GNU is the DA. It's Gezeli DA Jigemnyango. And as we are Gezel. But why is Gezel? It's because we did not win power. We did not win outright majority. But it doesn't mean even with the less that we have, we will succumb. We will fight till the end. And you must have faith in our leadership. I sit at Luthuli House, I sleep, I know Matamela will never sell us out in leading the ANC in that GNU. Uyabona kukhomnye umfana apha uthi usayine into yase Ukraine uyageza uyaphezulu naphansi. Ama comrade abilile ngaphansi kwekoloro andibilanga tu ngoba ndiphola apha enhloko ndiyazi umongameli akazuyenza lanto ifunwa ngulamfana akasoze andinaxhala. I know the ANC will succeed. This political education is helping us sizinze. We must have confidence in ourselves. Sikwazi ubona wrong no right no thengisa no ngathengisi. Sikwazi ukuthi sibone inkokheli ezisikhokelayo, not ke gossip, comrades. Yandile ke gossip. No Oliver Tambo, lo, as I conclude, that clip, that nice clip, don't misquote Oliver Tambo. Nihambe nibiza ama comrade vigilante. Nihambe nibabize uthini Oliver Tambo, uthi you must distinguish. And distinguish means ufune kubone izenzo ze revolutionary and izenzo ze vigilante. Don't go back to your branches and start calling comrades vigilante. Vigilante kele. Dianazi nizabe nibiza ama comrade ama vigilante everywhere. Imbiza abantu ngokuthi zi criminals and all of that. So masinga moshu Oliver Tambo. Okwesibini maqabane. Ucomrade uThabo Mbeki used to say to us as the Youth League, Mbalula, and I was with Malusi, why are you so complicated in organizing the into you organize abantu in the youth in the ends are complicated? No man, you must be simple. You must simplify organizing people. Don't be so complicated. You draft papers and all of that. And one time we were at June 16 and Malusi was addressing a rally and he spoke for an hour. And then he came after Malusi and he didn't read the speech, the president. And then he said, Lomfo fage netai apa. Uyani address her for an hour. Hey, baqhwaba abantu abatsha. Yeah. So that's what he said. And he spoke and they understood him. Political education, comrades, in today's world, is going to come to you through social networks and all of that. But over and above that, political education is simple. These basics that Makura and the team have presented here, they must be taught in very simplistic ways in the areas where we live. How did political education reach everyone in the era of struggle under apartheid? Simple. Comrades were being taught, asifuna ufundiswa. Xa sihleli sibutye bomlungu masifundisane politiki. Singayeki usibe sixoxa gossip. Ungoyiki ubuza ukuthi, but comrade, I didn't understand the president there today when he said this. What does he mean? That's political education. So this is great work. We are very excited about it as an organization. That's why, Comrade President, we invited everybody. All our regions throughout the country are part of this. In Gauteng, they are here physical, together with the PCs. All our PCs are part of this. And as we launch this work. And the National Executive Committee have adopted the rebuilding program. Kuzawusetyenzwa. We are going to work. But if you are not disciplined, we will summon you. And don't allow to be summoned. Deal with ill discipline where it happens. Because you comrades in the provinces are putting a blind eye on discipline. Discipline in amehlo. Umntu xa kageza ku Facebook, makabizwe. The first step is to make the comrade aware that you are wrong by doing this. The second one, gibela phozu kwakhe. Simfaki discipline ngoba kanayo. Akuthiwa ningaxoxi in public ipolitiki ne-GNU. Xoxani ipolitiki yekani ichuku. And that's what is important. So, comrades, we want to thank amagqala wethu to be here today. President Mbeki is always with us. Even in the NEC was with us and is still with us here today. And I want to thank you, Zizi, for your support and for putting us to line from time to time. And ungadino, ukusibonisa indlela where we are wrong, we accept it, some of us. Nobo ngasibiza ngo-12 sizawufika. Asithathi loo nto ingathi uyasigrogrisa. But indlela ibuzwa kwabaphambili. We don't have problems with that. Yeka ke abahambileyo bathi bahambile abahambanga sikwazi noyicacisa lona. But thina sheke namagqala wethu apha umkhuluwa, we have given you difficult tasks mkhuluwa. We have given you to chair our electoral committee and also to guide us in terms of political education. And we thank you for that and your availability. And we thank you all, comrades, and our veterans. We thank the fellow officials. We thank Comrade Gwede Mantashe wanted to close this meeting. But ndienda mcenga ukuthi makangayivali andiyeke ngoba nami ndiphethe. But ndiyayazi ukuthi I will pay for that. And thank you very much, National Chair. And then our Deputy President spoke, Shipoko Shema Shatile. We work very well, comrades. As the officials, sinabafazi abayi-3. Owokuqala nguNomvula Mkonyane, Mama Action. Usisi wami lo ungambona ezenza mncinci nje umdala. Dala great. And then uTG uyasinceda sibona sihleli apha nje imali kaTG le. So uMarupina akekho useChina on assignment. But sonke siphelele esikhokhelwa nguMatamela. Akukho uyasibona mos nathi siqhuba kakuhle. Akukho azenzele pha. Suphethe umbutho, but sizawuphatha with your support. With your support. Ningasixabanisi ma comrade. Yani sisupporte sonke ngolingana. And then sibulela amaqabani we-NEC wonke akhoyo apha ndibabonile nabangana discipline. Nani njenge-branches nibajonge abangekhoyo apha. But abanye abekho because they asked for apology. So andizukwazi ke ubizi roll call apha namhlanje. Ndibulela i-Veterans League uPutsnuki. Ndiyakwazi uPutsnuki abantu bayakoyika lo mcimbi we-ethics uphethe. And ungagungqi ungoyiki uyibambe kanjalo nje. And then i-Youth League ndiyayibulela i-Youth League ndibone unobhala upresident angakamboni. And then i-Women's League ikhona apha nayo. Nani nonke maqabani we-regions, we thank you very much. And then umkhonto wesizwe ukhona apha. I-convener ikhona apha yomkhonto wesizwe. Ne-chaplaincy ikhona apha. Noba sivulanga ngomthandazo. Ikhona. Comrade David Makura, thank you very much. Uhlala ufake le tayi ke mhlekazi. E-ofisini ungayifaki only today. Enkosi ndiyabulela. Amandla! Awethu! Thank you very much, comrades.
Comrades. Can we just, before we...